Let's kick off the session. Game Dev Q&A with Steam's business team. Join members of the team from Valve in a casual group Q&A session to help you get the most of shipping your game on Steam. We'll be covering questions from developers like how the Steam store works, how specific features work, and best practices and more. Please submit questions beforehand, which helps the Valve team be better prepared, of course. Well, let's welcome Eric Peterson, Business Development Marketing from Valve, Casey Boyle, Steam Business Team and Valve, and Cassidy Gerber, Communications from Valve. Hello, how's it going?
Hello, thanks for having us.
Uh, Thank you for your time. Be our guest. The screen is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We're so excited to be here. As you said, my name is Casey Boyle, and I work mostly in communications with Valve and a few other things on the Steam business team. And I'll let Eric and Cassidy introduce themselves because they're going to be the ones that are really helming most of this for us. So go ahead, Eric.
Thanks, Casey. I'm Eric Peterson. I work here on the Valve business team, working on Steam. And a lot of my job is helping developers to launch their game on Steam, whether that's tiny development teams to all the way major publishers, and helping them to really make the most out of their launch on Steam. In addition to that, we work on a bunch of different things on the Steam business team, but that's the primary focus of mine. Cassidy?
Hi, everyone. Excited to be here today. I work on the Steam business team. I've been at Valve almost 10 years now, or actually over 10 years now. And I've been working on the business team with Eric, but I also work with our infrastructure team. So I help our game teams deploy servers all over the world so that we can stay close to the gamers and deliver bits for Steam when we have big game launches and game updates.
Awesome. Well, you all submitted some really great questions ahead of time. So we're going to be tackling some of those as we go throughout the next several minutes or so. But first, we thought it might be helpful to start with some of the most commonly asked questions that we get and some of the big picture things that we hear about when people ask about Steam and how Steam works as a platform. We do want to encourage you, if as we're talking, you have questions, feel free to post them in the chat and we'll be monitoring them and we'll do our best to pick a few of them and answer them as we go throughout the process as well. So Eric, again, is going to start by addressing some of the bigger picture Steam questions that we tend to get. And then after that, we'll dive into some of the more specific ones to this group. Eric.
All right. So, I was thinking that I'd kick off the first question here with one that we often get, which is, hey, what is Valve and Steam doing at this conference? What are we here to talk about? And one of the things that we like to do is to go to these conferences and run Q&As and talk to developers. And also, we recently run the Steamworks Virtual Conference, which was a developer conference about Steamworks features. And it's really just getting to know developers and also understanding kind of what's on their mind, sharing knowledge with them, gathering feedback, and trying to tell you all about what we're working on. And it's a great way for us to share information about the tools that we're creating and to helping you to get the most out of those tools. But it's also a time for developers to tell us about what you're thinking about, what problems you're facing, and how to solve some of those things on Steam. And we found that this Q&A format works really well because we can share some of the common questions we get from other developers around the world, and to help with you to understand some best things to do with those questions, but also for you to talk to us about the questions that you have. So as Casey mentioned, we really hope that you'll share some of your questions in the chat with us, and we'll be addressing some of those later. One of the first questions that we get around the world is just how does Steam work? What is Steam? How does it work? How does visibility work on Steam? And how do I get my game shown on Steam? And all of it's kind of wrapped up into one big question, which is just how Steam works. And first, one of the things that I want to mention is, we put a lot of work into making Steam a platform where players can find every game that they want to play and also engage with features and services that really matter to them. And at the same time, we also put a lot of work into making the platform something that developers can use to reach their audience for their game. And we think of that as sort of a matchmaking service. We're helping those players to find the developers of the games that they want to play, and for developers to find their audience. And there are all kinds of games on Steam that can find their audience and find success. And the Steam audience is so big and so diverse now, all across the world, and all kinds of game tastes and interests and other things, that really any kind of game out there can find an audience, and it's about addressing and finding that audience on Steam that can help you. And we're going to share some tips with you today to try to help you to find success. A few things about Steam that you may not be aware of if you haven't interacted with us, or you haven't spent time on our platform, or maybe you're a developer that's done mostly mobile games, or worked on other platforms. Steam, anyone can ship a game on Steam using Steam Direct, which is our method now of shipping a game on Steam. And we've really streamlined the process and removed any kind of curation or barriers from developers shipping their games on Steam. And it's really just simple. There's a $100 recoupable fee. You can actually get that money back through sales of your game. And that just gets you started with your initial app ID. And that gives you your app ID for the store, and allows you to upload a build and to sell your game. And unlike other platforms, we really work a lot differently from the other platforms you may have worked with. And you don't need to work, you don't need to find a way to work with an editor to try to get featured, or try to get in through the back door and try to find a way to get on the front page. There's no secret handshake or other kind of deal that needs to be made. We've really designed Steam to automatically feature games that will be personally relevant to each individual Steam user. And that's why Steam is personalized around each user. You may not know this. You may think of the front page of Steam as being just a single place, but it's actually different. My front page of Steam is different than Casey's. It's different than Cassidy's. It's all custom tailored to each individual person's taste. And I tend to play a lot of free-to-play games. I like playing Dota. So it shows me a lot of free-to-play games, or other games that my friends are playing that happen to be free-to-play that it might think that I would like. It also shows me other games. I like RPGs and I like strategy games. It's tailoring exactly what it thinks that I would be most interested in, and showing me those games, which means that there's a wide variety of games that can show up there depending on what your tastes are. And the front page, first of all, of Steam is personalized for everyone, but it's based on things like the games that you have played or that you have wishlisted, any kind of curators that you follow, games that your friends have played and wishlisted. So Cassidy's my friend on Steam. If she's been playing a game a bunch, it might suggest that game to me as saying, hey, this is a game that your friends are playing that you might enjoy. There's also the top sellers list, which is a way to kind of refer popular games to other users. And also new releases and updates are featured on the front page as well. So Steam is really designed to react to bursts of customer interest wherever and whenever that is. That could happen on the launch day of your game. It could happen 2 years after your game is launched. But Steam is constantly monitoring and ready to detect any kind of major burst in customer interest in a game. And if there are a bunch of people buying your game or playing it, and it's going to be way more likely to suggest that to more people. And then that in turn, some of those people will then go on to play it and buy it, and it will suggest it even more. And that's the way that Steam is designed. So there's no, editor or person who's kind of hand selecting everything that's on there. It's actually personalized for every individual user. When I say customer interest, I primarily mean purchases, because for us, that's the easiest and most concrete way that we can measure true customer interest. Customers are interested in a game that they actually buy, and that's a pretty good measure, by which that they're actually showing their interest in playing something and buying something. There are a few places on the store that we do manually curate, but there are actually really only a handful of things like daily deals or midweek madness deals or weekend deals. There are just a few things, and those we select those games based entirely off of metrics. So those aren't our personal taste or the games that we like best. They're really based off of the games that meet a certain bar in terms of customer metrics, things like sales or interest and things like that. So primarily, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but if you think your game is a good fit for something like that, you're free to reach out to us, and we can take a look at it. And one of the questions that we received in advance of this talk was, how important is user analytics, and how much does it influence the game's recommendation for new players? And based off of everything I just said, the answer I can say is emphatically very important. I think that is how Steam works. The way that Steam works is it's designed to kind of detect what players are enjoying, what they're playing, and to try to match those players with those games that they think that will be most interesting. So if you have a game that people are enjoying and they're playing, it's a success. It's more likely to be passed on and suggested to other players. We really put a huge amount of energy into supporting devs and players as a PC gaming platform. And one of the other questions we sometimes get is, hey, have you thought about adding mobile games or other types of games on the store? And the answer to that is truly, we are a PC gaming platform, and we have no intention or other ideas to try to get into other things like mobile gaming. No, we really focus hard on PC gaming as our main area, and we do I think everything we can to try to serve players in that way.
And while we're kind of talking about the big picture here, I think Eric did a really good job of kind of giving an overview. There are some questions that we got from this group ahead of time that are really similar to other questions we get about maximizing what Steam can do for you. And it can be really easy when we're talking about Steam to think about it in the context of once your game has launched. But there are actually some things that you can be doing to ahead of your game's launch to maximize what Steam can do for you. And Eric's going to get into a little bit of that. As far as what you can do both on and off Steam early on. And then he's going to go through some of the features and tools that you asked about when it comes to picking the right ones for your game to use, because we know that we offer a lot, and it's kind of a good problem to have to be able to pick between all of them, but there are ways that you can find the ones that work best for you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the questions that, both Cassidy and I, and I've traveled a bunch and we hear a lot of developer questions. And one of the questions that we get most often is, my game is coming up soon. It's coming out in a month. It's coming out in 6 months. It's coming out in a year. What can I do to give myself the best chance to find success on Steam? And there's a sort of a checklist of things that I think about and I talk about when I talk to developers about what to do on Steam. And some of that involves stuff that you can do on Steam, and some of it involves things that you can do off of Steam. So I'll break those up for you. The first thing is, on Steam, ahead of your launch, one of the most important things that you can do ahead of your launch of your game is getting your Steam store page up on, as early as possible. As soon as you have the ability to provide screenshots for your game and a description of your game, and you may obviously, if you don't have those things yet, you may want to hold off, because you're going to need to provide screenshots. But it's okay to have things kind of in an earlier state, because the earlier that you're able to get your Steam store page up, the earlier you have a destination for players to discover your game, and also a place for traffic off of Steam to then reach your Steam store page, where users can then wish list your game. And we'll talk a lot more about wish listing in this talk, but wish listing is a very important mechanism for letting players know about the availability of your game down the line. So the earlier you have a store page up, the earlier you can start gathering wish lists, and that's an important function of your launch. And it's also a way for you to talk to your customers about what you're working on, what's happening in your game. Even if that's just a week in advance, it gives you a chance to just gather as many as you can and talk to your users. And we recently launched, I don't even know if it's recent anymore, time has flown by so much. In the last year, we launched a feature called Steam Events. And Steam Events is a really powerful tool. There's a video on YouTube that's also localized, if you're interested, that explains what Steam events are, and how they affect communication about your game. But it's essentially a really powerful tool for you to talk about whatever is happening in your game, whether that's we're releasing a new trailer for our game and showcasing gameplay for the first time, or we have an opportunity on Discord to talk to our fans and tell them about what's happening, or we're going to run a live stream, or we have a play with a developer time, or we have a new play test happening. Whatever it is that's happening in your game, you can use Steam events to talk to your community, and those events will appear on your Steam store page. So it's a place for you to be able to talk to your fans, talk to the people that are checking out your game, and it will communicate to them what is happening and what you're working on. I also recommend that you tag your game and using the tag wizard. We have links to that in our documentation, but the tag wizard helps you to really quickly and easily add tags to your game. And tags are important because it's a way for Steam to understand what kind of a game you have. And so then it can recommend it based off of those tags. But it's also important for users because they may want to browse or search for a game based on an individual tag. If you have a user that likes horror games, they might want to just look at horror games, and then that's how they find your horror game. So that's an important thing to do. And there are some other tools to mention, things like using Curator Connect to connect with curators who can help get the word out about your game. That's a free feature. Making sure to run discounts at the launch or after your game. Participating in festivals and promotional events is another important thing. We've been running these things. We have one coming up next called the Steam Next Fest, and it's about showcasing upcoming games and demos for those games. And that's been a really powerful tool to help developers to reach their audience and to find new players. So those are all important things in advance of your launch. And the other thing that I would mention is your store page is a very critical design element of your launch, because it will communicate to players the quality of your game and your commitment to the game and their interest level in the game. And you want to capture their attention as quickly as possible. So things like having a trailer on your page that really quickly gets to the action and doesn't have any kind of dead space at the beginning is very important. Having compelling screenshots, having artwork for your capsule artwork, which is our way of saying artwork that is how your game is showcased on the store. Having good branding for your game, is really important, because that will entice users to click on your game and to check it out. All of these things, work together. There's no one single important thing to do. It's like all of these things work together to accumulate to give you the best success in advance of your launch to try to find something, for users to find your game. The other important thing that I want to mention is, we recognize that Steam is not the only place on the internet that fans find PC games to play. It's just not. There are so many other outlets out there. There's things like Twitch and YouTube and Discord and all of these other media. There's so many different ways for fans to find games. And it's really, really important for you to do the work in advance of the launch of your game to get the word out about it. We don't recommend that you use your launch on Steam to just drop your game and hope for the best. It's really important for you to do the work, to talk to live streamers, talk to YouTubers, do some marketing, go to conferences, build your community and talk to fans and try to get them aware of your game, get them wishlisting your game, send a bunch of traffic to your store page, which will then also help, to drive awareness of your game. And all of that is really important because, again, if going back to what I said previously about how Steam works, is that Steam is really designed to react to bursts of activity, bursts of sales, and bursts of interest in your game. And it's also designed to react inherently to the investment that you put into making people aware of your game. So I would say do all of those things on Steam, but also do everything you can to get the word out about your game in advance of your launch. Whether that's a year in advance or a week in advance, it's still really important to get the word out about your game. Now, we had one other question here that I wanted to quickly address. There's a lot of questions, so I'll jump into this one next. One question we often get is, Steam has so many different features. There's things like early access, there's achievements, there's cloud save, there's trading cards, there's so many different things. What are the best features that I should, make in my game, or I should add to my game? And the answer to that is honestly, it really depends on your game. And I think it's important to understand from our side that Steam features are really just tools. They are tools for you as a developer to use because they will help you to solve a problem. They will help you to save time. They will help you to do something in your game, or to reach players, or to offer them an experience that you just wouldn't have been able to do because you didn't have those tools. And a lot of times those tools were created because of developer requests from developers like you, who want to know what they can do to offer a feature for their customers, or they came from our own internal development teams. One of the things about Valve is that in addition to Steam, we also make our own games, think games like CSGO and Dota. And so a lot of times those development teams will have their own ideas about tools that could really help them to ship a game. And we will also add those tools. And ultimately, because they are just tools, you should really ask yourself, will using a particular Steam feature really save me time, or will it help me do something in my game that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise? And if so, you should give it a try. Some features should be implemented much earlier in development, and some features should be implemented much later. But I would recommend that you browse our list of features. We have them conveniently listed on our website. If you just go to our partner website, where you go to sign up to be a developer, or if you're already a Steam partner, you can be there. Before you log in, just scroll down the page. And I know most people just immediately log in and just enter their credentials and go to their site, but actually there's an entire website scrolled right beneath that explains all of the features that Steam has to offer, and explains actually kind of the level of difficulty of each one to implement, and what it can do for you. So I would recommend just really checking out those features and trying to understand what is the best thing for your game.
Mm. And a lot of what Eric is touching on is so true for Steam, as far as really looking at developer feedback constantly. Carla, you've been asking some really great questions in the chat. A lot of the questions we're planning to address as part of our talk, so I think we're going to touch on most of what you're asking. But something that you touched on that I think is really interesting is the tools that we're talking about, the features that we're talking about. We build them with all developers in mind, not just developers from big studios, or people who've been doing it a long time. The goal is to create tools that all developers can use, and we do that based on your feedback. And in fact, we have several features, dev-friendly features, that we've added or expanded on pretty recently, and Cassidy is going to take us through some of those.
Hey guys, yeah, so a couple of the next questions we got that are related. One is, what are Steam's plans to make the Steamworks platform more developer friendly? And I think a related question is, do you intend to improve the service of remote play? Eric and Casey have touched on sort of how we prioritize feature development on Steam and as a company in general, but I think a couple things to keep in mind is, not only do we make our own games, our roots are really as a game development company, not as a platform. So Steam arose as a way for Valve to ship its own games. So a lot of the features that are built, that Steam itself was built with a game developer in mind, and that really continues today. It's part of the reason that we're here today to stay connected to the development community in Brazil, because we want to understand what the challenges you're facing are. So a few of the features that we've so I think I'll start here with Steam Remote Play. Do you intend to improve the service of Steam Remote Play? And the reason I connected that to the question about what are your plans to make Steamworks platform more developer friendly is, we have this feature, Steam Remote Play. I think you guys might be familiar with it. It allows you to play, it's a way to play like a co-op game with your friend, sort of using this, even when your friend doesn't have that game installed, you can like sort of play it over Steam, and sort of have an experience, a remote experience playing a game with a friend. It's the same feature we took and built this play testing with Steam Remote. So if you're in development with a game and you want to just you want to try out a new concept and see how the user responds to it, you can use Steam, the same tech of Steam Remote Play, to like try out your game with someone, even if they're not there in the studio with you. So and this was something that our game teams told us would be super useful. And so during the early days of the pandemic, we were like, oh, this is a great thing for us to release to game developers, now that being around other people is dangerous. So that's one thing that we've done recently. I think another big thing that we've done that was really driven not by customers but really by game developers is these publisher pages. So I don't know, I'm not super familiar with what game developers are here today. I didn't get a list before the call, but one of the things that you might find, I don't know if there's anyone here that's working on their second or third game, but one of the things we started to hear from game developers was that they put all this effort into building a community for the first game and their first launch, and then they get to their second game, and maybe it was a completely unrelated IP, that unrelated game from a content perspective, but they really wanted to sort of have their community from the last game know about the new game that they were developing. we didn't have a great way of sort of representing that relationship and engaging that old community for the old game and bringing them over to the new game. And so the publisher pages are really an answer to that. So now, in addition to when you make an event, you can make these event tools that are with these concept of event for your games. You can also publish those events to your. They'll show up on your publisher pages. It's a great way to sort of feature all of the content that your studio is making right there on your publisher page, and sort of developers can follow you, and it's just a way to sort of collect up that community beyond just a game. Another thing we've been working on is the Steam Play Test feature, which is different from Steam Remote Play. This is Steam Remote Play Test. This is if you have a beta that you want to run. So say you're leading up to launch, you want to test out like the scale, like how your game servers can handle users at scale. And so you want to get 1,000 players in prior to launch, just for a weekend or something, to test out your servers. We can now help you collect up those users. You can create a separate app ID on Steam. It's connected to the base game, or to the base app game, or sorry, the base app, and you can players can come to your store page. They'll say, yeah, I want to opt in. You can let players in groups of 500 or 1,000 or however many you want at a time. And so that's another feature we just rolled out. I think that just go out today, Eric, like the non-beta version.
Yes, I think it did actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so we've had it in beta for a minute, for like a few months. But today I think it just went officially live. And then I guess I think Carla's questions actually reminded me another thing I wanted to talk about was Steam Game Festival. That's another thing that we were actually working on prior to the lockdowns, but it seems to have, and we plan to continue working on, but we have the concept of this Steam Game Festival that we're running multiple times a year now. It was originally a way to get these game demos in front of players kind of, all across the globe on Steam. And during the pandemic, it became really like, it grew a lot, let's say, because all these in-person events like E3 in the US or Gamescom in Germany or whatever, all these like sort of consumer facing events where you would normally have an opportunity to get your game in front of players, stopped existing. So we started hosting these game festivals. We had a huge participation, both from developers, but even the participation is growing consistently from players. And it's been a great way to sort of get people interested in your game, get people following your game, wish listing your game, and get feedback kind of early on. And I guess the last thing that we're doing that I think is like a really sort of developer focused feature that we've been working on that we just sort of launched is UTM Analytics. I can post links to all the stuff that I've referenced. I don't want to get too deep into what UTM Analytics, the technical details of this, but it's basically a way for you to track conversions from to purchases on Steam from any of the online marketing that you do, and allow you to track to the cart. So that's another feature that was pretty widely requested from our developers that we just shipped not even a month ago. So, but again, like all this stuff is that I've talked about is sort of motivated by like the way that we prioritize this stuff is just from feedback from you guys. So if there's other things that you guys have feedback on that you think would make, that you see as making Steam a more developer friendly platform, we definitely want to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Eric, and he's going to talk about what makes he's going to tell us about what makes the Steam store page really good.
Thanks, Cassidy. Yeah, so about the Steam store page, I think I already answered some of this question already, but One of the things that we're often asked to do when we review store pages, developers will come to us and say, "Hey, tell me what you think of my store page." The things that at least I look at when I'm looking at it is sort of the overall sense of quality that you get from the page. So whether that's the quality of the screenshots, the quality of the trailer, but also how alive the page feels, and that's a combination of, does it have Steam events? Is the developer talking to the community? Are they engaging with the community and trying to talk about what's happening in the game? I also think about some of the basic design elements of a store page, things like having section headers and graphics embedded in your store page. Things like animated GIFs I think are a really great thing to do for your store page. To a degree, don't go too crazy with animated GIFs. We really recommend to keep animated GIFs down to about 5 MB because you want to think about how long it takes for your store page to load, especially if you're in a developing area and you don't have a lot of bandwidth. But things like the overall quality of your game, I think really, the overall quality of your store page really speak to the quality of your game because customers are reviewing a store page and trying to make a purchase decision. They're trying to decide whether or not to buy the game, and the quality of the store page helps them to make that distinction. The next question that we often get is about wish lists. We have a lot of questions about wish lists. What can I tell about wish lists? What are they? How important are they? And how do they impact my visibility? So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what wish lists are and how they work. Really, ultimately, wish lists are an indication or a tabulation of the overall marketing and awareness that you've done, all the work that you've done to get the word out about your game, and also, how many customers are aware of your game. And when it comes to wish lists, there's no milestone, there's no secret number that you need to reach for Steam to take notice and to refer your game. It really doesn't work that way. Sometimes we'll talk to developers and they'll say, "I heard that you need 10,000 wish lists to get on the front page, or 50,000 wish lists," or whatever it is. And I can honestly say that it isn't true. Steam doesn't really look at wish lists in that way when it comes to visibility. There are a few small places that wish lists do impact kind of where things show, but for the most part, it's really not factored into things. However, wish lists are really important for another reason, which is when a customer wish lists a game, what happens is that they receive an email when the game is launched. And the email just says, "Hey, this game that you wish listed is now launched. Go check it out." And that is a really important way for you to let users know that your game is out there and it's available and they can go buy it. And so some percentage of those users will then go on and buy the game. Some won't, and that's fine. But it's a way for you to tell your community and your followers about the launch of your game. They will also Steam will also send an email to those users when your game is discounted at 20% off or greater. So down the line, when you have decided to discount your game, they will also get an email when that happens. So and so what happens then is that when those users then get an email and they are prompted to go buy the game, and they go buy it because it's a game they wishlisted and they wanted to check it out, Steam will see those sales, and that is that burst of activity, that I originally talked about. That's that momentum that you're getting, and Steam will pick up on that momentum and is more likely to refer and to show that game to other people. So in an indirect way, it can have a positive kind of virtuous cycle on your visibility. It's a positive feedback loop. So we don't really rely on those things in terms of the visibility when it comes to hard numbers, but it can really have a huge impact on the overall success of your game if you're able to gather a lot of wish lists and to convert those wish lists.
And then we got some questions in the chat and also ahead of time too about the trading cards.
Yeah, about trading cards. So right. So one of the questions that we often get about trading cards is, what is, I want to know the criteria, or what exact thing do I have to do to get trading cards and emoticons activated for my game? And ultimately, trading cards are designed to be an additional value for players, and we really hold them back from initial release just to make sure that players are buying and playing your game just as a result of your game being a good game and it's good for its entertainment value. rather than simply a thing that just unlocks trading cards or is just a trading card thing. So the threshold is designed to be a reasonable point that your game should eventually reach if you have legitimate players and your game is doing commercially, pretty well. But but we don't actually share that exact metric, with the developers on where they have to meet. Ultimately, if you're just doing your thing as a developer and working hard on your game and trying to make it fun and trying to build a community, it should just happen automatically. The next question we have is for Cassidy, and it's does it cost anything to keep a free game published on Steam?
So the answer to that one is no. I'll say if it's just simply a free game that you want to distribute, you pay your $100, you put it up for free. We will distribute it for you. The one thing I'll add is that if most free games tend to have some sort of in-game monetization, and so if you do have a free game and you sell things within the game, you need to make sure that you've integrated with Steam Wallet, and there's documentation available on the Steam website about the wallet integration.
We also wanted to get into some regional specific questions that we received from this group ahead of time, especially when it comes to the Brazilian market, when it comes to Steam, and then some regional pricing questions. And Cassidy has some information on both of those.
Yeah, so Brazil is definitely our biggest market in all of Latin America. And we see that both on Steam in terms of players who or customers who purchase on Steam, but also in terms of our own games and the player pools. Like we have the biggest player pools for CS:GO and Dota in Brazil compared to any other countries in LATAM. There are 3.7 million active customers in Brazil, and which is it's grown about 32% over the last couple of years. There are so in terms of Latin America in general, there are about 8.7 active customers, and then 125 million across the globe. We had another question about the value, and so this one I wasn't sure. It says, what is the value of Brazilian reals to launch a game on Steam? So I wasn't sure if you were asking like how much it costs in Brazilian reals, like what's the game fee if you want to publish a game on Steam. So if you're just asking what the $100 submission fee is in reals, it's actually 389 reals. I didn't know that, so I looked it up. But if you're asking more generally about regional pricing or how we price in Brazil compared to or really anywhere, because a lot of game developers are sort of Western. They're Western European or USD, like that's where Valve is located in the US, and so we have historically had, in our beginning we were kind of US focused, and then we were Western Europe focused because there's a lot of game developers there that first came to the platform. And so as we've grown and started thinking about customers all over the world, we've realized that to be successful in different markets, you need to price appropriately for those markets. And so we think a lot about how to reach customers in ways that make sense to them. And that's why we have, really grown our ability to localize your store pages into a lot of different languages, price your games appropriately in different currencies, and support local currencies, because I don't know for you, but when I see a price in Brazilian reals, it doesn't mean a lot to me. But when I see it in USD, it means a lot. And so we found that as we started offering prices in players' local currencies, they were more willing and more interested in purchasing on the store. And so we think that's a really important thing for the platform to support. Also, payment methods, like that's another thing. You need to support the payment methods for the customers that the customers actually use if you want to have sales in those regions. So we've invested a ton over the last few years in supporting, beyond just, what we use here in the US. One thing I think is kind of cool is that I was trying to remember the order, because I've been at Valve now 10 years, and I remember the order as we started adding these local currencies. And I'm pretty sure Brazilian reals was the first currency we supported in all of the Southern Hemisphere. We supported that before Australian dollar or anything south of the hemisphere. The first thing that we did was Brazilian reals. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, I've probably been at this company too long, but let's see, and then what else did I want to say about regional pricing? Um, we do check region and payment method when a customer makes a purchase, to help prevent gray market like pricing arbitrage. And all that means is, if you have like a lower price in, say, Russia for those customers compared to US, you can, we don't let US customers come and get the game at Russia pricing, because we have price checks in place to prevent that. So yeah, I think that's all I had to say about regional pricing. I'm gonna hand it back over to Eric to tell us, to answer another one of these questions that you guys submitted. Eric.
Yeah. So the question that we get sometimes is about bad games, or kind of asset stamping games, or kind of games that developers or indie developers feel are lower quality, or maybe like that they find on the store, and they're worried that those games will impact their game, or that the customers won't be able to find their game because there are so many of these low quality games that are on Steam. And one of the things that when I talk to developers about this, and we get this question sometimes from all kinds of developers, and reality is, and we've looked at this really carefully, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about this, is that games that have few or no customers purchasing it, or wishlisting it, generally don't get recommended or surfaced on Steam in any of the major visibility mechanisms on Steam. And remember, refer back to what I said about visibility and how games are shown on Steam and recommended on Steam. It's based off of customer interest. It's based off of whether customers are buying and playing these games. And so the only place that you may observe these games, and that maybe where this question came from, is the new release list, because it does have a lot of games, and it's really just a constant feed of every game that is coming there. But the new release list really shouldn't be viewed as a primary means of gaining new players or gaining visibility for your game. And if you're using it as that, you may have missed out a really good chance to get the word out about your game in other means, using your social media channels, driving your community, talking to people at conferences, doing whatever you can. The new release list isn't really designed to be that discoverability mechanism for your game. And what we found is that basically the games with no players and kind of no interest in them are really not getting in the way. And to find them, you'd have to click 3 or 4 times to even to get there. So generally speaking, games that are low quality and lack customer interest are not given much visibility on Steam, whereas games that have a lot of developer interest and community attention and customer interest and a lot of love and attention poured into them generally do, and they do get surfaced on various places in the store. So the advice that I give to developers when they ask about this is that in general, it's kind of best not to think of those games, asset flips or whatever it is that you want to call them, as your competition. They're not the games that you are competing with. And in general, they aren't really surfaced on Steam in a meaningful way. You, as an indie developer that are investing in your game and really trying your best to get it out there, you're competing against other games, that are also putting love and attention into their game. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. So. The next question we have is kind of one that we get often about Steam, is that developers want to know more about localization, whether that's important for their game, and what localization really does on Steam. So the answer to that is localization is extremely important. It's something that we really find to be incredibly important, particularly as the years progress and as Steam has grown. We are in so many countries around the world, and then our users represent a very diverse set of people with a lot of different languages, and so there, it is no longer the case that you should really ship your game in just one language or just a handful of languages and expect to have that success that you're looking for. So most users on Steam, if you don't know, have set a language other than English. English is no longer the largest share or represents the majority of the pie of Steam users. So tailoring your experience to those users is really important. And the way that the Steam store works in terms of visibility is that we are much, much less likely to suggest a game to a user if it doesn't support their selected language. So, for example, I don't speak Japanese, and so a game that is only localized into Japanese, it would be very unlikely for it to recommend it to me, because I as a non-Japanese speaker would have a hard time probably playing a game that was only in Japanese. Now, I could go find the game and seek it out and try to find it, but it's less likely to suggest it to me and to refer it to me. So language support, when you add a new language to your game on Steam, what it does is it really opens up a whole new bunch of users to you, who can now then be suggested and shown the game. So, if you were to add simplified Chinese, or you were to add Turkish, or whatever it is language that you add, you have a potential to add a whole bunch of new users who speak that language. Now, does that mean that you should localize your game into every possible language? Probably not. It really depends on what your game is like. If you have a puzzle game that just has a few words on it, it might be easy to localize it into a whole bunch of languages. If you have an RPG with a novel's worth of words and this huge amount of words, it might be really expensive or difficult to do that. So we really recommend that you take a look at Steam stats, and you can take a look at the wish list by region for your game to get an idea about where your existing audience is. And you may find that you have a whole bunch of users in Turkey, for example. And so you're like, well, I haven't even talked to anyone in Turkey about my game, and I have a whole bunch of users there. I should probably localize my game into Turkish. That's the kind of approach that you can take to looking at your game and trying to decide what localization works. And you can also use the data that you gather from playtests or from other kinds of interactions with your community to try to decide how to localize your game. But ultimately, you as a developer want to localize your game because it opens up more of the world to seeing and interacting with, and hopefully purchasing your game.
Awesome. Cassidy has a few really great tips on pricing that we want to get to, but before she touches on that, we got a question in the chat about Steam Spy, and she had a couple things she wanted to mention on that too.
Yeah, so I don't know that we would, I know that we wouldn't necessarily recommend relying very heavily on Steam Spy. We've seen some misleading data there. So I just wanted to clarify that we actually don't recommend using Steam Spy in general. We've tried, and we've had people, developers ask us for a while, like, can you share, can you publish something like Steam Spy? And we've tried looking just from a few different angles and have a hard time coming up with a data set that we believe would actually be helpful. We think that chasing trends is dangerous. Like, for a while, everyone was publishing, everyone thought that Battle Royale was the thing to do. And so everyone was making their own version of Battle Royale. And sure, there are some wildly successful examples of Battle Royale games, but there's also
Tá. Thanks to Eric Peterson, Casey Boyle, and Cassidy Gerber. This panel was amazing. And don't forget to share the link to our channel and tag your friends to also participate in Big Festival 2021. It was a pleasure to be here, and we come back in 5 minutes. Stay with us.
Big Festival 2021, the biggest games festival in Latin America.